Good morning. Welcome to Revelation. Little fun fact for you. There are 20 Bible verses about contentment. Paul wrote to the Philippians in 4:12 and 13. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. You know, it's pretty amazing to me. My life, reflecting back, it seemed like I had about a 2 year window with whatever job I was working or whatever situation I was in at the time. And then I would become discontented. Couldn't figure out why I was discontented. I would, you know, make excuses why I quit this job, why I quit that relationship. Nothing ever seemed to be quite good enough, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And it was funny when all of that turmoil was going on with me, seemed to be like when my walk with Christ was at its furthest distance. And it seemed like whenever I was on point, I was talking to him daily, I was praying, I was putting my faith and trust in him, it seemed like I was more settled and content. And it's funny, even once I got myself back on track and I had that contentment, every now and again things would creep in, and it was like, why me, poor me, why isn't this going right, why isn't that going right? And I just almost like, I don't want to say threw things away, but you just kind of let your head jump out of gear, and you walk away from things that you should have stayed in for the long term. Things that you should have walked away from, you ended up staying. You just second guess yourself. And I think it just goes back to kind of what Paul was talking about. You know what it is to be in need, and you know what it is to have plenty. And I think what we end up doing, or at least from my perspective, when you have plenty, you become complacent, you become ungrateful. When things are given to you where you did not have to work for it, it seems like, for me, I would kind of get in a rut, and then I would, not bored. Bored isn't really the way. Discontented. I was not content. It's amazing. You can have everything: a roof over your head, food in your stomach, your health, and you run around mad about everything, complaining about everything, talking about anybody and everybody, just because you're so dissatisfied and uncontent. And I think as a society, that's kind of where we've gotten. We think we should have so much money, and we should have the big house, and we should have the fancy cars, and we end up getting totally lost for the contentment that we should have for all the blessings we have. You know, as I'm driving down the road, I'll see some homeless person sitting on the side of the street panhandling. And a friend of mine told me years ago this saying, and it's always stuck with me. When you look at those people and you say, if it were not for the grace of God, there I go. And that is, oh my goodness, truth in your face like no tomorrow. For years I was driven to do this job and do that job, and I would go and I would have a great interview, and my first few months to year on the job I would be, that stellar employee. I was very content. I was making money to pay my bills. I was eating well. I was driving a nice car. I had tons of friends. Life was awesome. And then all of a sudden, there was just something that kind of snuck up behind you and put a monkey wrench in it, and you couldn't figure out what it was. And I think it really goes back to, the evilness that we have going on in the world. You could feel it, 20, 30, 40 years ago, and now it's just magnified that much more. Nobody's ever happy. I don't want to say ever. Most people are not totally happy and content with all the blessings they have in their life. They take them for granted. They want more, more, more. They expect things to be given to them. They expect things to be free. They think that they deserve it because of this, injustice or that injustice. I'm not quite sure how we can fix that in today's day and age. It truly has to be through Christ. We kind of have to get off of the me, I, that love of money. Take that away and just be content. So it kind of goes back to when I was a kid. I had a revelation that I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I think I gave myself the age of 30. Now, back then, people didn't become millionaires from working hard. You just put your head down, you went to work every day, you paid your bills, you listened to people. Even then, as a kid, that they were just not content. Most adults that you knew drank like crazy. Even when I was traveling around to different churches on the different church buses as a kid, the different adults that you came in contact with through the organized religious establishments, it was always finish the church service and then go to a barbecue and everybody's cracking open alcohol. Now, I love to have me a beer after mowing the lawn, or I love to sit and relax and have a cocktail with friends. I'm talking about that was their lifestyle. And it seems to me in retrospect, the thing that they lacked was that contentment. It's the same thing that we have today, only today it seems to have grown exponentially. So now it's, how do we fix it? Well, I think maybe reminding people. I'm just not sure. And so then I go back and I just look at myself. I worked for years with the fire department, and I retired from the fire department. It was one of the biggest blessings, most wonderful career I could have ever chosen. There were so many times when I indeed was not content, but I think for the most part, I truly was content. When I was on the fire department, I knew I had a career. It provided everything my family needed: food, roof over our head. It was a very rewarding career. Most people go to work and they're like, where's my reward? That was the one thing with the fire department. There was just reward after reward because I was able to teach as well as provide medical care to people as well as provide, fire suppression. When, I first got on the fire department, we had tons of house fires. I guess what I'm getting at is, instead of always throwing things to the side or worrying about that dream that you had when you were a kid of being a millionaire, why not just be totally grateful and content for all the blessings that you have in your life? Now, I've known what it was to be in need. I mean, there was a time before I got on the fire department, I would go buy a package of hot dogs and cut it up in a can of pork and beans. I'd let my son eat until he was full, and then I would eat what was left over. So you kind of need there, but again, go back to contentment. I had food in my stomach, clothes on my body, and a roof over my head. So really, I had plenty. I was just getting drawn into today's society and today's way of thinking. Remember, Hebrews 13:5, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you and never will I forsake you. Alrighty, y'all have an absolutely wonderful and blessed week. I'll see you next time on Revelation.